What's up, guys? It's Ron from Ron Road Law, and today we're interviewing my good friend, one of my best people in the truck parking industry, Jake Gusso. He runs Rig Hut remote software for truck parking management. So, Jake, welcome to the channel. How you doing?
Thank you, Ron. Doing great. How are you?
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you on here because I think a lot of people that watch this channel, they are industrial investors. They are interested in iOS and everybody loves that buzzword. But what you do is really, really specialized. I mean, uh, how would you describe your corner of the iOS world?
Sure. So within iOS, you've got different sort of tranches, right? You've got traditional net lease outdoor storage assets where you might have a Ryder or a JB Hunt occupy 100% of your property or a vast majority of your property. We operate in the managed truck parking space where you've got, a multi-tenant operation similar to imagine a pedestrian parking garage or a surface lot where you've got guys coming in and out in high volumes. So what RigHut is parking management software purpose built for industrial parking applications, right? We automate the inventory management component. So what spaces are available and which tenants are parked in which spaces within your facility. We log, certificates of insurance and license data if the landlord chooses to, capture that information. It's got a built-in payments, billing, and reporting system, and it makes it really easy to, deal with some of the headaches that come with multi-tenant parking operations.
That's awesome. So,
And if you'd like, I can give you a little background as to how RigHut came to be, if that would be helpful.
yeah, jump in.
So I've spent the entirety of my career in the real estate business. I started out as a property manager when I had just graduated college. Kind of grew in that business with a local investor down here in Miami. And then I transitioned into a brokerage career, leasing and sales brokers, primarily for retail and office assets down here in South Florida. And then I started using the cash that we were generating from brokerage activities to buy and operate retail and primarily office assets out in the Midwest with a couple of partners. So the lens from which I view everything is generally from a real estate operator's perspective. And that's how we were originally looking at truck parking and outdoor storage. We saw the supply demand imbalance specifically down here in Miami. We saw some yards back then that were charging $400 a month. Some guys were charging $500, some $250, and it piqued our interest. There was a lot of opportunity to capture upside. And so the first thing we did was we spun up a third-party management company where we were literally boots on the ground, managing these facilities, checking drivers in, showing them where to park, sending them license agreements, invoices, chasing them for payment and all that. My co-founder Jose, who's got a background in software, we started, building little tools that we could use to help us in the management capacity, and then that kind of evolved and took off and became its own product that we now offer to the market.
Okay, so that's useful. I didn't realize what's the difference you think between management of an asset versus what you guys do, inventory control.
So in the traditional sense, we would be just a software provider to a property manager, right? So think of, in traditional real estate, you might use Yardi or Buildium and then have, XYZ company managing your real estate. We are primarily the Buildium and the Yardi, right? For some of our customers, we do get more involved on like receivables, for example. That's a separate service that we offer. If you've got, high volume delinquencies and things like that, we can use our customer support team to help you get paid
that's
faster.
me. Full disclosure, I'm a very happy customer of Rig Hut for some of our yards as well. Okay, so I guess just still give me a scale. How many yards do you provide software to, or
so
how many states, kind of thing?
We hit the 100 mark a couple of weeks ago. Today, I think
Congrats.
we're at like
Was that was like a recent portfolio, right? Some investor signed up multiple locations with you guys.
Our most recent portfolio was 4 yards in a suburb of Atlanta. Most guys that come onto the platform operate more than 1 yard, or they operate very large yards, right? If you're in the, 20, 30 spaces, you can get away with not using software, right? You can use Excel and QuickBooks, but once you get past that number, it becomes a little tedious.
I find it's really true for commercial real estate, though. It's kind of like guns. Nobody owns just one piece of commercial real estate. They if you have one, you have to have a friend, and then you get a couple more, and it's so easy. And oh well, buddy, I'm a partner in my buddy's property, and oh he has got money in my deal. It's really something that nobody has just one, and I think it's true for truck parking or iOS assets as well.
True.
So one question that I know a lot of people want to ask is though, do you enable people to do this remotely? Would you say that that's a primary driver?
Do we enable people to operate their facilities remotely? I'd say yes, currently, and that product's going to get even better once we launch gate automation that we're coming out with later this month.
Awesome. All right. Well, stay tuned. I will drop the Rig Hut website and your Twitter handle, your X handle, if people want to follow you, so they can see when that comes out. But yeah, I think it's really curious, how you stumbled upon truck parking, but then just dove into it and became an expert, right? I mean, what are some of the craziest truck parking stories in Miami or other sites that you've had?
Generally for monthly parking facilities, I don't want to say they're completely low maintenance. There is some, management and customer service involved that we relieve a lot of that. But generally these guys are dropping their asset, right? And they're either going home or they're only staying with you for one night. So I've heard some horror stories get circulated that I just haven't found to be true. But, things happen. You clip a gate, you might clip another truck, things like that generally get resolved, fairly easily. One of our customers, who shall remain nameless, he doesn't deal well with delinquencies.
Yeah, I think the best stories, the stuff that I've heard is all the overnight truck stops, because you get a very transient crowd and you get a lot of characters just dropping in, mixing with, other people that they don't see again. It's where you get the, what do they call them? Like, I don't think they really exist, like prostitutes that hang around the yards anymore. Lot lizards. I don't know. I feel like I've never seen it at a Flying J's or a Love's. They're too respectable. So I gotta lower my nightly rates somehow.
I've never seen them either. We can go into this if you'd like. Miami, in terms of a market, is kind of unique, right? Where you've got what the county describes as the urban development boundary, which is this imaginary line. Like if you see those gerrymandered maps, right, elected maps, it looks exactly the same. It's this imaginary line drawn by the county commission that says you can build inside this line, you cannot build outside this line to a greater density than one home per 5 acres, right? So a lot of agricultural uses are outside the urban development boundary. Some of those agricultural facilities have become truck parking yards, right? They're not supposed to be, but everybody caught wind that, there's some income and their basis is super low. They've owned land forever. So they're parking trucks out, in Southwest Miami-Dade, which is an area called Homestead. And we have heard some stories of what you're talking about out there. There was actually, if you Google Operation Lot Lizard, there was a Miami-Dade, raid on Southwest Homestead truck parking facilities. But I don't think it's really enforced because we just don't have enough capacity. There's still trucks parked out there. They didn't get shut down.
Sure. Yeah, I think back to the enforcement, a big part of our thesis is that rigorous city enforcement of the bobtail parking is good for business. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, you could just park your truck for a couple of days when you came home on a residential street. Maybe you could find an empty lot and people for the most part would leave you alone and you could just do it for free. Now you've got every neighbor calling the police, calling the HOA, and they will ticket and they will tow you and they will fine you. And so the drivers, as a result, they have to find a paid location that is in a commercial district and yada, yada, doing things the right way. So that's part of our thesis, is that it is pushing these drivers into the proper parking channel. So I think enforcement ultimately is good for us. It's doing things the right way. So
agreed. Same thing's happening down here in Miami.
So you talk about Miami. Obviously, you have assets that you control in Texas and Atlanta. What are some of the market rates? You can be as specific or kind of general. I would say be more specific as you can. Like, can you just give us a survey? On my last video, people were really curious about, hey, $500 in Miami-Dade off of 95, and then we can get $200 in Tarrant, Fort Worth, $300 in Dallas. What are some markets and pricing that you guys are actually seeing transact and not just listed price?
I'll go through a couple of markets. So if we start in Miami, think of it as 3 tranches, right? That stuff similar to what's outside the urban development boundary or low quality facilities. They're in like that $400, $450 a month range, right?
Is that dirt, non-fenced?
Yeah, it's not. If you've got high value stuff, you don't necessarily want to be there. Inside, Miami-Dade County proper, in a properly zoned facility in an industrial area, you're going to be at $550 a month, generally $550, $600. There's one specific facility that I've posted on Twitter a few times named Miami Truck Parking, which I call the Four Seasons of truck parking. Very high quality facility.
Is that the one that Relentless Capital bought?
Yes.
Relentless bought that, right? They've
Yes.
got a food truck. They've got palm trees, picnic tables. The thing is like, I would stay there.
It's immaculate. So they charge $750 a month plus tax. And I think they're at $35 a day now, and they're full with a wait list. Best location in Miami, like geographically the best location and the highest quality facility. If you go to Broward, right, so 1 county north, inside, closer to 95, you're in that same 525, 550 range, right? Vantage Truck Parking, or formerly Vantage, now Safe, operates a site in Hollandale Beach that is Broward County. They only charge by the day. I think it's $30 or $32 a day, and they're full, of guys that are typically parking there monthly. So there's still some variability in rates there. If you go to Atlanta, for example, that you're in like the $200 a month range generally. If you're close to Atlanta proper, it'll drop as you get into the suburbs. North Jersey, we've got a lot of yards and data up there. The closer you get to Port Newark, obviously the higher your rate's going to be. Highest rates that we've seen up there on our participating facilities is $850 a month per truck and trailer combo.
Wow.
Yeah. And as you get,
and is that necessarily full amenitized?
No.
Okay, so I had this video where I talked about like the classes of truck parking, right? So my class A, in my mind, fully paved, nice lighting, fully secured, 24-hour. Maybe it has on-site security or not. Probably bathrooms, dumpster, that sort of thing. That's class A. Class B is gravel, still fully fenced, still fully secured. Automatic, maybe it's a manual gate, but it should have lighting. It's not going to have those other things, but it should be an improved crushed rock or millings type of surface. And then class C is that Southwest Dade, dirt, no gate, no fence, park at your own risk. Don't leave diesel in your tank because it won't be there when you come back kind of place.
Right.
So for that, the New Jersey for $850, is that even a class A? Is that paved or?
I'd say it's class B under your definition. And Port Newark has seen a drop in rates. They're not getting $850 a month right now. They were at the peak.
Okay.
Right now, there's some yards that are still in the mid 700, 750, 775, which is still incredibly high, right? Some of these guys are parking 10, 15, 20 trucks. What else? Dallas, I think we're kind of testing rates right now. So like at your facility, for example, I don't know if you want to talk numbers at your facility?
Sure. Yeah. What are we, 215,
215 plus tax on new guys, right? And we're not getting too much pushback on that. And some of the legacy tenants, we're trying to bump them to 215 plus tax, and we get some pushback from some guys. So I think we're right around there, right? Low 200s in Dallas, and you've got a nice facility.
And Dallas
right?
is a little bit higher.
Right. Sorry, Fort Worth.
Thank you. Yeah, we're in Fort Worth, but I was saying Dallas is higher. Some of the yards fully paved. There's class, what I call class A stuff near the airport. It's 350, 400.
Right.
But those are nice, fully paved stuff. Again, I don't know what do you think drives a parker to want paved versus the gravel? Is it just a question of the tires getting dirty, that the trucks getting dirtier or dustier?
I think it is a little bit of that. right? And then typically on a gravel facility, if it's really being used heavily and trucks are turning on it, you're going to get those divots, and then they puddle when it rains, and it might puddle, where they're sitting on the tires, or if they drop the jacks on the trailer, which is typically where they're stepping out of the truck. But overall, yeah, I think it's more convenience and maybe aesthetic than necessarily functional. Like, we've been on a bunch of gravel yards that are perfectly fine for parking. Asphalt ones are a little nicer, but
Yeah, I think in Texas, and I've repeated this line a lot of times. I'm curious to hear your input. Asphalt, it just doesn't last in heat. So in those higher temperature locations, you hit 95, you hit 99 degrees. In Texas, we're routinely in the hundreds. The turning truck is going to just tear up any asphalt. You cannot make asphalt strong enough when it reaches, because that's the air temp, the ambient. The surface temp is much more. We're 130. I mean, it's like, it's hot to the touch when it's black asphalt. And so for that reason, I would say I prefer gravel, because you just have to go concrete in our experience. So like in Arizona, no such thing as asphalt truck parking. It just does, like, why are you going to put it down? It's going to tear up. So people do concrete or gravel.
I actually learned that from you when we first met. I had never thought of the surface temps on asphalt, because it doesn't
Well,
get hot enough down
yeah,
here,
the surface
right?
temps, and I know we've kind of talked about it. Yeah, my dad does a little bit of truck parking, outdoor storage too. Although he sold it, he sold it recently, and he's always been in real estate. But he was one of these opportunistic guys where he had land out in North Las Vegas, and people would come by and be like, "Oh yeah, I just need to park my RV, or I just need to park this bobtail when I come back." And he's like, "Sure, how about $30 a day, and how about 300 a month?" Then he filled up. I don't know, what did he have, like 2 acres or 4 acres, but he had some of his own crap. He's one of these older owner user
Sure.
guys. He has like 6 cars. They all run, but they're not nice. And I'm like, why do you have 3 cars that are not nice? Just sell them and get like one nice car. But I digress. But yeah, he's the one that kind of was telling me that, because he was thinking about putting asphalt down to make it a little bit nicer. It just gets very dusty in Vegas, and he was living there, so it'd like blow dust.
Right.
So of those, do you want to talk about any other market or West Coast? Do you have anything?
I'll tell you something interesting that we learned with a new onboard in Minneapolis. It's actually Eagan and Fremont are the names of the suburbs. First of all, highest Somali population in the world outside of Somalia. So we learned that during onboarding. We actually had to try to find a service to translate our English, because it was such a barrier. So I forget the name of the specific municipality where it's banned exactly, and where the borders are of the ban. But one of those yards that we onboarded is within the banned area, but he has an exception to operate. I don't understand how he got it. Maybe it's grandfathered. I'm not entirely sure. And he's one of those yards that operates at more than 100% capacity. He's got a lot of daily parking. During the onboard period, you can attest to this, Ron, we're very involved. All of our team is talking to these drivers and making sure they're good and they know how to use the system. So our number has spread in Minneapolis as the guys that have truck parking, even though we don't. We're just servicing one customer over there with a couple yards. And the phone is ringing off the hook with drivers looking for parking in Minneapolis. All day the phone rings. Guys over there. And they're at, these 2 yards are at $285 a month for a tractor trailer.
And is it paved or gravel?
Gravel fence, access control, lights, cameras, Class B. I don't know. Is that borderline Class
the
A?
cameras are a weird thing to me. I thought more people would reach out to us requesting footage, but I can tell you, I've only gotten one request in 5 years, and not hundreds, dozens of incidents, whether it's just, hey, something was broken, or I think something this. Stolen diesel is probably the number one. Nobody has requested footage, and they always tell us about it after the fact. Maybe it's coupled with a rate raise, but they tell us just generally like, yeah, I got stolen. I'm like, why didn't you tell us earlier? Because they have trouble pinning down the exact time that it occurred. But if they would have told us on Wednesday that my diesel got stolen over the weekend, I can at least go back and I can make a pretty good sifting because I care about it, and I will go through the footage to try to find a truck, a vehicle, a license plate, something. Instead, I mean, do you find that? Do people just ignore the cameras? It's like they're there as a deterrent, but I'm like, guys, these are recording, they're uploaded to the cloud. If something happens, you need to say something. Otherwise, what's the point of the cameras?
I agree. We rarely got the request when we were running those facilities down here. We got one. I can remember one time early on sitting in a trailer and going through footage. And it was because a guy, someone clipped his mirror, which I understand. But
Yeah.
the other thing is the enforcement, right?
Well, I think sometimes the guys just want to know, they want the effort too.
Right.
I've had a lot of appreciative texts that say like, holy shit, you guys care the most out of any other yard I've parked in. The fact that you just respond, or that you call me back. And I'm over here like, hey guys, this is just basic customer service. I call you back like 2 days later and I'm embarrassed and I'm apologetic because I'm coming from a real estate background where, these tenants are paying me 25,000 a month. It's a big deal. I have a duty to them. Or I'm a lawyer, and I'm I'm charging my clients a lot. For them to get some level of customer service that previously did not exist, right? It was mom and pop and nothing. They were like, you get to park here and it's a privilege, and shut your mouth and don't say anything. Don't complain.
It goes a very, very long way.
Yeah.
Answering the phone.
Yeah. Just answering the phone or texting back. Okay. So that kind of goes into my next question, but what is a market that you recommend from your observations? I mean, here you're going to give all of the truck parking secrets from all of your properties. What is the location that you think is best?
I'm not recommending anything. I'll tell you which markets I like. I think if you have long-term money, places like Miami still have a lot of room to grow. If you walk into any yard down here, they're full. And we recommend to our customers to test, similar how we're doing at your facility. Let's see, where the market is. When are we going to start, losing guys? At what price? They don't do it generally. And then, like I said, the discrepancy, you've got, guys in the center of Miami-Dade, well-located facility paying $550-ish a month. And then you've got Miami truck parking at $750 because they have asphalt and some palm trees and a food truck. Like, that's not that far out in terms of amenities, right? So I think Miami has room to grow. We're very land constrained, right, geographically. I also like some what I would consider, growth markets in Florida. If you look at Lakeland, right, it's on I-4, smack in the middle between Orlando and Tampa. It's experiencing a lot of growth. It's got a big industrial presence. Publix has a big presence up there. I believe Walmart is the next biggest up there, followed by Target and some of those other big box style retailers. I like Savannah, Georgia. Everyone knows generally freight is moving off the West Coast into the Gulf and the East Coast ports. We've seen rates move up in Savannah.
Savannah's got a big port, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have a big. Do they have rail serve? Is that like an intermodal, or is it just port access?
They have port access. I'm not sure on the rail, where the rail connectivity is. I'm sure they do have it. In Florida, I also like Orlando. Everyone kind of scoffs a little bit when I say that because Orlando's a completely built, MSA, right? But it's very supply constrained in terms of industrial land.
Weird to me that you say that, because when I look at a market like Orlando, I think that there's a lot of farmland. I think it's very open. Once you get out on 4, once you head, east or west out on whatever that Seashell Highway is, Beach X, it seems very open to me, a very short distance from the CBD, from the warehouse districts. It seems open, but do you think it's that land is consolidated? It's held by developers who are not going to do truck parking. Is that the difference?
I think generally the sentiment from the municipalities is they're not going to allow more of these outdoor storage style uses. And the amount of appropriately zoned land in Orlando is very few. It's basically that small pocket called Taft, right, south of Orlando by the airport. And they're full to the gills, right?
So do you think you can make money buying an existing truck parking lot and solely managing it better and just raising rates? Like, is that a play?
I think so. It's always going to be a function of your basis, right? Just like any other kind of real estate transaction. If you buy it right, yes, right. If the upside is available, I think that's certainly the case down here in Miami. If you could find, it doesn't have to be a steal, right? But you have to pay less than what it's worth. Generally, that's what you want to try to be doing as a buyer, right? And I think there's room to grow in rents down here.
Yeah, I think it's tough to buy some of the existing product unless it's severely mismanaged. A lot of these owners, they just want sky high pricing, and it's funny. I had a tip. I was talking to my intern. I said, if you talk to any seller and if he says iOS, you nope out of that call. You cut it. He's going to ask for something. But if he calls it a yard or if he calls it my land, then we're good to go and we can do a deal. He'll get something reasonable. But if the seller ever gets wind, and it's like me, if people say iOS, I'm like, you're going to charge way too much.
Generally, it's true.
Well, I'll kind of wrap it up from our side, Jake. It was awesome having you on. Learned a lot about different rates and where there's demand. But do you have any parting words for the audience?
No, I'd say thanks for having me. Truly, it's a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, we'll drop your comments down below. Guys, check out my channel for more truck parking videos, and we'll see you next time.